This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Let's talk about somebody else who's going to be coming in. WWE releases to Sports Illustrated on December 13th that Mauro Rannallo is going to be taking over as the lead announcer on Smackdown with the move to the USA Network. This is a big deal for them to go from Sci-Fi to the USA Network. Of course, these days they've leveled it up even more and they're on Fox. But to come to the USA Network is a big deal. And I guess they want a new announcer. Most people in this point, the hardcore fans, were familiar with Mauro either from his New Japan pro wrestling stuff he called on Access TV, never live, always taped, or Showtime Boxing, which is where I first became familiar with him. And he probably had the biggest fight in history where he was on the call. Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao in May. It was an unbelievable spectacle in 2015. And he's become a bit of an expert, a quote unquote, well-educated, well-read, smart mark, if you will. He was a big fan of wrestling growing up for years and years. So he's not necessarily a boxing guy who now has to learn wrestling. He grew up a big wrestling fan and even had a goal as a young person to call wrestling for WWE. Well, finally the goal is going to be realized. And we know he's still doing big things these days. Just a few weeks ago, we saw him call Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., but he's no longer with WWE. And he had quite the experience there that most everyone listening probably knows about. Why don't you think Mauro worked out in WWE, Arn?
He made a couple of mistakes. He was damn good at what he did. He came in, he kept his mouth shut. He was on time. And he had a reputation that came with him, which I would think some of those guys sitting there with headsets must have felt threatened by. That would be my best guess, because that's probably why you pick on the new guy. You see a threat in him, and he was damn good and is damn good at what he does. Very intelligent. His pacing when he does commentary is totally different from anybody else you've ever heard. He lends the excitement to what he's talking about. It sounds and feels legitimate. I think he had a run in with a couple of the guys and didn't know that he could fight back if that's in him, because it's a definite Shark Tank, this business. You better have thick skin, and you better know when the cutoff point is, when some guy's on your shoulder giving you a bunch of shit, when it's time to pop him in the mouth with an elbow and look after yourself. You figure that out in the business. I don't think Mauro got that far. It was unfortunate. I thought it was a loss for the company because the guy did a great job. That's my best recollection of what happened.
It's interesting what you say there, because I think a lot of people would hear that and say, well, I've been listening to wrestling stuff and learned about wrestling for a long time. And yeah, that makes sense. But I think other people would say, I don't think I should have to get in a fight at my job. Do you think the culture needs to change in WWE? I mean, I understand the camaraderie amongst the boys and all that. And I don't think anybody listening to this, if you're not in the business, can really question that. But if you're an announcer, that's probably something that a lot of our listeners would think, well, hey, that should be different. You shouldn't have to think about popping a guy in the nose if you're just there to call the wrestling and not be in the fraternity, so to speak. Do you think the culture needs to change?
Well, of course it does. But I've always came from a man's world. Wrestling for me when I started, was a totally different cutthroat. It's way more cutthroat than it is now. No one was helping you along gently by the arm, and there was no such thing as cut. Let's do that again. None of that existed. It was a tough business. And the one thing you learned right away is you be respectful of every single person that had been in the business before you and was in the business currently. And you showed them that respect. And when somebody stepped on your neck, you didn't wait to see if it was okay to get their foot off their neck. You bit their friggin' ankle off. That's the world I came from. Maybe there should be a little more of that in behind closed doors. And, who am I to say? But it's in the world of politically correct, that would be a time that it's got to be okay to defend yourself.
Well, I hope that Mauro is happy now. I know he's had some mental health struggles through the years, and he's been pretty open about that and a big advocate for mental health. And I hope that he's enjoying what he's doing, because Lord knows, between calling Tyson Jones and Pacquiao Mayweather, he's been there for some really, really big stuff.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money, it's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.